I still get blown away when people haven't heard of Next Rung, and that's our goal. We're going to change that. Is if you haven't heard of it until today, now you have. And maybe you're going to tell somebody else, and they're going to tell somebody else, until every single first responder knows that they're not alone and that it's okay to not be okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. My name is Charles English and I'm a filmmaker and video producer. And today I've got a very special guest, a friend of mine. He is a paramedic lieutenant. His name is Robert Arrieta. He is in the film, which will be released later this year. And Robert, thanks for joining me. It's good to see you. I haven't, we've chatted, we texted, we've done some messaging back and forth, but I haven't spoken to you since we wrapped filming in last October in 2024. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, every day on some level for all of us is a struggle, I'm sure, but it's really neat to be able to kind of focus on your blessings and all the positives, including being a part of this film, and just things are good.
So, reflecting on the journey we took with you and Chief Pierce and everything like that, one of the topics that I think in the film, which was one of the more powerful moments, and I won't be referring to the film constantly, guys, don't worry about that, is your conversation, and it's Mike, I believe, right, in the kitchen?
Yes, Mike Ochoa.
Yeah, Mike. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't have the list in front of me, so I apologize, Mike. But that conversation you guys had was powerful, and you talked a lot about firefighters opening up to each other, being readily available, being open to listen to somebody. Before we get into the heart and the meat of it, talk to us about your history. I kind of just jumped the gun and went. Talk to us about your history as a paramedic and firefighter.
So I've been EMT paramedic, or not a paramedic. I've been a paramedic about 17 years, but I've been an EMT and I've been doing first responder stuff for about 24 years now. 20 with my local department, and I'm sure I'm one of thousands, if not more, people that when September 11th happened, I was 21 years old, and I felt very lost. Like I wasn't really doing anything with my life. I wasn't contributing. I was just kind of cruising along. I had no real goal, and so. Initially, I wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to go into burning buildings, and EMS and paramedicine was not on my radar at all. But in the process of trying to get in with my local department, it took a couple of years, and I didn't want to just sit around and just work a regular job. I wanted to keep working towards it, and I became an EMT. And not only in the area that I live, we run mostly EMS calls, but aside from that, I worked in a rural area, and I got to see kind of like. Even though we were EMT basics, we were doing quite a bit for the community, and I got a lot of fulfillment in the relationships that I grew with the people that we'd respond to, and just being able to make a small difference just by showing up, just by talking to people. We weren't always doing something profound. We don't always do profound things on calls, but we have the opportunity to affect people's lives in a positive way and have our lives affected in a positive way. And just how things went, I kind of gravitated more towards paramedicine. I kind of saw as an EMT basic, even if I had the knowledge, even if I was willing to do the work, you're not licensed to do certain things like put somebody on a cardiac monitor or start an IV or all these other things. And I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that person that people relied on, and that I could say, I have the ability to do X, Y, and Z, as opposed to having a ceiling of, I can only do this, this, and this, and I have to wait for a higher level of care to do this. So just by default, I kind of graduated to paramedicine. I've been doing it, like I said, about 17 years, and I've had a lot of ups and downs. Obviously, I wouldn't have been on the documentary. I wouldn't have had everything that I have today had I not had all the slip-ups and the dark moments, but kind of coming out the other side, knock on wood, I really feel like I have a renewed respect for the career, and kind of I really, really, really don't take for granted being able to be there with these people in their worst moments. It does affect us, and the way I've always termed it is you have a choice when you go on these calls and you have a horrible ending, whether it's a child or anybody else, and you can either freely give a piece of yourself to them or you can let them take it. But either way, it's going to happen on some level, even if it's just an itch in the back of your head. it's going to affect you in some way. And those calls build up, build up, build up after 24 years. You know, if you don't have an outlet, if you don't figure out what to do with your mental health, if you don't speak up, speak out, you're bound to explode. At least most of us. Like, I always try to term it and say, you know, there are individuals that have been through a lot of trauma prior to this, that aren't as heavily affected maybe. But even that, I feel like if you had enough trauma in your personal life and you came into this job and the job doesn't affect you as much, that in itself is something to maybe kind of delve into and talk to a counselor about, because not only can you live a healthier, happier life, but it can make you even better at your job.
Yeah, and it's that. Yeah, thank you for that. And it's interesting too because I've heard you say many times you talk about some of the work you do is speaking to the EMS Corps, and if I misspeak, please correct me. The
Yeah.
EMS Corps, and one of the most amazing things I think one of my favorite moments filming during the process was at the end after you tell your story, and you tell them, you look them dead in the eye, and you say, "But this is an amazing job. You get to make a difference every single day." And I think that tells a story, not only your words, but how your face looked. And me just being behind the camera, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. This is powerful stuff. So, so I think it's amazing that you not only go out and continue to speak, you're actually going later today to speak to another class, which is amazing. I'm glad they're bringing you back. But talk to me. You talked about trauma, things building up, and so talk to me about how peer-to-peer first responders, what are the healthy things they can be doing so that maybe that those calls aren't adding up, like you said? What have you found that works? What do you tell people? And again, we are not clinicians. We are not therapists, just so everybody knows. We are not. Robert does public speaking and trainings and stuff like that. So what do you say to people about being healthy in that sense? Because you can lift weights all day and be the strongest dude on the planet, but if you're not okay up here,
Yeah.
talk to me about that. What's the messaging? What are the conversations you're having about that?
It's literally what you just said. It's starting the conversation. And so my generation and the previous generation to me, we were always taught to suck it up. It's like, if you can't deal with it, just don't do the job. And I think in a lot of ways that kind of worked to just skim over the issues until we started seeing that there were multitudes of first responder suicides. I believe a couple of years ago was one of the first years we had lost more firefighters and first responders to suicide than to on the line of duty deaths. And the numbers are always skewed. Like, we don't always share exact numbers, but it's a real problem. And so I think starting the conversation is huge. What I will say that I've been amazed by is the younger generation. I would say people within the last 5 years in the department are huge about talking. Sometimes when they get around guys like us that have 15, 20 years in, I think they don't know if they can talk. I know that I've created a safe space for most of my guys. But like, I had a call that was a pretty bad call, and I remember asking one of the newer firefighters, I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, yes sir, I'm fine." And I said, "Cool, I'm glad you're okay, but that really affected me. Like, it really, really bothered me because these calls are never easy." And he said, "Really, sir?" Because that really bothered me too. You looked like you were fine. And I think that's part of the problem too, is we are trained to wear these masks. So when we're on a call and a family member sees us, we're not the ones freaking out, right? But it doesn't mean we're not freaking out inside. But to other people, if you don't explain that, they may just assume like, "Oh, I've had this call before, it's not a big deal." And so reminding them that it's okay to not be okay, as simple as that sounds, I think is huge. I think one of the things we did very badly for a very long time is anytime we had an opportunity to say, "Hey, I'm struggling, can I talk to you real quick?" We would go to each other and it'd be like, "Hey, I had this bad car accident with 7 patients, right? And we're natural one-uppers." And you sit there and you go, "Oh man, I had that same call, but I had 9 people." And all of a sudden, the person you're going to have listen to you turns around and goes off about their call, right? And it's a little therapeutic for them, but the hardest thing I think we have to do is learn how to be listeners. Not try to solve things, not try to fix things, but just be there, because just having a conversation changes everything. And kind of what we talked about as far as topics before we even got on here, it's still a struggle. After 24 years, it's still a struggle for me to openly share with my wife, to openly share with people that I love on an individual basis because I'm so used to just keeping it in and not sharing it because I don't want to bother them, right? But just as
Yeah.
simple as starting a conversation can literally be life-changing and life-saving. As ridiculous as that sounds, being seen and knowing that you're not alone is huge because so many of us, including myself, always thought, well, my call is unique, or met this person that's been on these horrendous call and or dealt with these horrendous things, and why would they care about the one little call that I had that affected me a ton when I haven't seen nearly as much as them? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've been on the job for a week or 30 years, just be there for one another.
Yeah, so let's circle back. I know I kind of got ahead with Mike, but you guys talk about your relationship. You had a bit of a challenging start to your relationship. But was he one of the first, and I don't know if I asked you this, but was he one of the first firefighters or paramedics that you connected with in that way that you made that, oh, okay, this is safe for me to be myself or to be vulnerable? Would Mike be one of those first people or?
Funny thing is to be honest, not at all. We had
Oh,
had
okay.
we just it was never a knockdown, drag out, blowout, anything. We just grew apart. We didn't really vibe, and we were both super young. We both went to the same paramedic class, and I think we just butted heads. Were both immature. At least I know I was, and just rubbed each other the wrong way, but didn't see each other enough. It was just more of like, this is who Robert is, and this is who he thinks I am, and I just don't want to deal with someone like Mike, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you fast forward to me working a trade at work, and I'm working with him, and the day before I'm like, oh my God, like, really don't want to see this guy. I'm dealing with enough stuff as it is, and I don't want to fight, and I don't want to deal with anything. And so I go there with the intention of just sitting down and just being there and totally kind of doing my own thing, staying in my office, all that stuff, right? And as it happens, he just, I forget what started the conversation, but we started talking about mental health. And we started talking about our history. We started talking about, I just hit 5 years sober. And so at the time I was maybe three. Don't quote me on it, but it's been a couple of years since he and I have gotten close. But it was very interesting because he was very much somebody I had put in a category of like, I can be fine with him, I can deal with him, but I don't trust him and he doesn't trust me, and we're just going to be like ships passing, right? And we
Yeah.
had a very open conversation, and it was very interesting because it was very much about very dark things and very things that a lot of firefighters and first responders don't talk about. And what he ended up telling me was, he's like, I know we didn't get along, he says, but you are living your truth. Like, I see the change in you. I see over the last couple of years that you really are trying to be a different person. He's like, and I hold no ill will towards you. He's like, I know that we had our thing between us, but you're my brother kind of thing. And I won't delve into the details of the conversation, but we were both, I know at least I was basically in tears by the end of it. Had a hug, and we've been super, super close ever since. And it's funny to think about because we had a Christmas party where my ex-wife was here, and so was he. And she saw how he was with his son. She thought he was such a nice guy, all this other stuff. And when I told her who it was, she's like, really? That's Mike? She's like, I
Wow.
thought you guys hated each other. And it's so funny
Yeah.
to think like I would categorize it as just being young and hard-headed as far as both of us went, but it's really, really neat. And he's shown me over and over again that he means what he says and that he really is my brother. But it's really interesting to see when you come clean and you say, these are my struggles, or this is what I'm going through, or this is where I'm at, and you're open and honest, the relationships that you can create and the walls that you can break down.
So have you found more success stories like Mike? Have you found more
In
brothers,
your
more
personal
people
life?
that you can connect? Yeah, yeah. I mean, like within the department. I mean, we'll definitely talk about, the family life. Definitely, I want to jump more into that. But like, have you found that's an amazing story? How you guys, it was friction at first, but you guys found a way to grow and work together. Are you finding? I guess what I'm asking is, are you finding within the departments you're starting to see those connections being built? More people open to these conversations, more people having these conversations. Is it something you see?
Oh, 1,000,000%. The DMs I get through Skulls for Hope, the peer support we do through Next Rung, we're constantly, even though it's a confidential situation, with Next Rung, we're constantly receiving calls and messages about people looking for help and support. And that never happened before. And so you get these people that are like, okay, I'm struggling. I need help. I'm going to pick up my phone. I'm going to message a stranger and ask them for help, whether it's a conversation or counseling or all the way to inpatient treatment. That was not 5 years ago. None of this was really in existence. And so I'm seeing a huge change across the board. And I've noticed now that I'm finally myself, now that I'm finally sober and like we said before, living my truth, you get to see, like you filter through a lot of people that still think a certain way of you because they don't know you or they're going to pass judgment on you no matter what. But I was taught through Next Rung that nobody gets left behind, that we sit there and say, it doesn't matter who somebody is, how they treat you, what they do to you, deserved or not. You know, if that person comes to you tomorrow in crisis, you're going to be there for them. And it's created this very straight line for me to follow of knowing who I am, trying to be the best person that I can be, because I have a huge amount of issues. I mean, that's part of my story is let me share all my mistakes with you so you can maybe avoid one or two of them. But I am the last person to judge anybody. It's fine to be judged. I think people that are in their worst moments or in their biggest crisis tend to judge others. And it would be wrong of me to shut anybody else out. But I also think that when the dust settles in a lot of ways, when people are struggling or are going through a hard time, we're here for them, you know, and that's all that matters. And so to simply answer your question, yes, I'm seeing a huge change, not just in my department, but I mean, literally across the country, with people that are, even if it's not on a big level, even if they're not advocating across their department, even if they're not saying anything to their coworker, they're talking to us, and that's huge.
And I think I did talk about it with Chief Flynn too, that a lot of that gets set at the leadership level. So you've got people in the leadership saying this is okay, that you're, like I said, you said you're safe. Then that opens doors. Maybe that is the guy, you know, going to the firehouse. You see the posters, the peer support programs, the mental health facilities that are available to them, which I don't know a ton about, but I know they're there. I've seen them. So I think you're right about that. Leadership kind of sets the tone for those things, and Chief Flynn had some great insight on that. So having that support, whether it is with a colleague at work or Next Rung, which give me also, before I ask this question, give me, for those who've never heard of Next Rung, give us the elevator pitch. What is it? And just in case, I'll put it in the description if there's anybody that hears this and wants to reach out or support this program. Talk to us about Next Rung real quick, because I'm hoping to have Blake on in the next few weeks. So, okay. But talk to us about Next Rung real quick, because you're a part of it, right? You're one of the.
Yeah, I'm the treatment director over there now. I started as a peer support member, 7 or 8 years ago, and Blake's going to slap me if I'm wrong about any of this, but 7 or 8 years ago, came on as peer support member. We were very, very small at the time. It's been amazing to watch the growth. It's a Christian-based peer support team. Just because we're Christian-based doesn't mean that you can't reach out if you don't follow the same or you're not in the same place, but it's just who we are. But we're a group of now over 30 peer support members who at any time, 24/7, 365, doesn't matter what day it is, doesn't matter what time of the day it is, you're able to either text or call a number that we have. And I should have it memorized by this time, but you can find it online. And
we'll put it in the description.
Yeah. So. But anytime you're in need, it's completely confidential. You can reach out either for a conversation. If you're struggling in your area and you don't know where to find a counselor, you can reach out to us. We can facilitate that. If you are dealing with a financial issue and you maybe can't afford the first couple of sessions, or you're on the fence about, hey, I really don't know if I want to spend my time or my money doing this, we can facilitate and support the first 6 sessions to get you kind of over that hump and to decide if it's something that you want to do, all the way to what my role is now as treatment director is if you find yourself in need of inpatient treatment. I actually facilitate the counseling as well, but if you find yourself in need of inpatient treatment, we can find that for you. And I'm not only a member, but I'm also a client, because I did inpatient treatment and Next Run found it for me. So To me, and I know it sounds cliche, but Next Rung was a big part of what saved my life. Obviously, my wife and my family and the support that I've had. But I came to them in crisis and told them I needed help. And the founders were the ones that were able to find the treatment center for me that I went to, and it changed my life, saved my life. So.
Yeah. So touch on it. So you can, if you're a first responder, it's law enforcement, it's
Law
EMS, it's
enforcement, yeah, anybody in the that field.
in that circle. Yeah, they can call and they'll get a first responder connecting to them confidentially. So if you don't feel comfortable, if you're in a small community and there's stigma attached to it, but you need to talk to somebody, definitely reach out. It's a peer-to-peer support, and Robert, when we were chatting about it before, he's like, if you call 8 times a day, nobody cares. Like if it's whatever it is the first responder at the time needs. So I think it's a wonderful program, and happy to support it in any way that I can. So thanks for talking about that, and I'm hoping to get Blake on as well, so we can do a deeper dive into it, how it started, the history, and all that good stuff. So my question was, if you're getting hopefully the support you need with having colleagues who you can say, hey man, that call, well, that one rocked me a little bit. How are you? Or maybe having a little bit of support. Maybe you don't have to go into the weeds on it, but maybe you talk about it and you're able to unload whatever it is. How does that translate to when you go home? Because you talk about it a lot. You have the uniform on, you have your mask. You say that too. You've got your mask on, and then you go home, and then you're a human being there, but you're also a human being that goes home, and you take off the uniform, take off the mask. So how does that? I assume, and it's going to sound like a dumb question, having support, whether that's Next Rung or whatever it is, peer support services within your department or whatever, when you go home, that's got to help the family, right?
In a lot of ways, yes. Some of us advocates, at least myself, we find that we are super supportive of others, and we are very invested in saying, hey, you need to be open, you need to be honest, you need to reach out when you're struggling, right? But who's the worst person to reach out when I'm struggling is me, right? So I can figure it out on my own, and I have the tools, and I am helping others, and they don't need to be bothered with my stuff. And luckily, I'm surrounded by a very close a close circle that will be like, hey, and a veteran friend of mine actually said it the best, because he asked me one day at the gym, he says, hey, Robert, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good, which is the worst answer, right? And he says, well, okay, well, how is Robert though? And I looked at him and I was like, I hate you. And I was like, okay, this is what's going on in my life. This is what I'm struggling with. Thank you for asking, kind of thing. But what we try to facilitate, and again, like you said, we're not counselors. We're not trained in anything other than living this life and doing this job. And we end up, it's very difficult. Like I just talked about it in counseling last week, it's hard to turn these things off. Like when I get in arguments with my wife or I get frustrated in a situation, I have this wall of defensiveness. I throw up right away. I put on my quote work face where I don't show a whole lot, and I shut down emotionally. And it's very good to have that in the job. It's very good to be calm, cool, and collected in a crisis situation. It's not okay when it's your family members. It's not okay when you're person you love the most in this world, or one of the people you love most in the world, and you're not being open to them. And I talk about it in my talks is give them this much. If you come home or you're not being yourself, a good situation was I was at work, I had a horrible call, and I text my wife, and it was very difficult to text her, but I texted her and said, hey, I just want you to know, I don't want to talk about it right now, but I had a very bad call. I'm probably going to be distant, and I don't want to talk right now, but when I'm ready to, I'll let you know. I just need to be very clear that it's not you, because whether we get told it's not us or not, when she's struggling and she's not reacting well to me, I automatically assume it's me. What did I do? What did I do wrong? What can I change to fix it? And she tells me, no, it's not you. But then she snaps at me about something, and it's not me, but I can't help but think it's me. And so I still struggle with it. I still struggle with sharing my emotions, and it's not easy to talk about, but it's like this whole last week, I've cried more than I probably have in the last 6 years, and it's because I'm trying to let those emotions out, because I tell everybody else, right, let your emotions out, and then when it comes to me, I'm like, I'll get choked up and my mouth will quiver, and then I catch it and I stop it because it's not okay.
Yeah.
And it is okay. And to be honest with you, as much as I feel exhausted, as tired as I get, as much as my eyes hurt, I feel so much more zen. I'm so much more level when I let those emotions out. And this is stuff that I've talked about in counseling that has happened 5, 10 years ago that I just skimmed the surface of, or I honored and said, yes, I've dealt with this, or I've seen this, but you don't talk about how it's affected you 10 years later, right? And so I really try to get people to know just talk. And most of us don't talk because we don't know what to talk about, right? I know I'm struggling. I know I have a drinking issue. I know that I'm in my second or third divorce, but I don't know how to start fixing it, right? And it's just like, just start a conversation. I used to go to counseling and say, I have all these jumbled wires in my head and I want to lay them out. I want them all to be in a perfect line in front of me so I can figure out what my problems are. That jumbled wires have never been undone. There's nothing I've figured out, but I can tell you I've gone to counseling sessions where I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today. And I've left feeling better. And so it's literally just give it the opportunity. Just try to talk like we talk about with Next Rung. If you're not ready or you don't know that you want to spend your money on it, take us up on our offer. We'll give you the first 6 sessions for free, and you're either going to know by then that you hate it or that you love it. And if you love it, I find it very difficult for us as people to not have one less drink or not buy one less t-shirt for ourselves. Just set aside that money because it's an investment in you. And it's an investment in your marriage. It's an investment in your future, to kind of deal with this stuff that we don't want to deal with. Like we talk about it in one of my CEs is avoidance is huge for us because you have a horrible call in a certain area. You avoid that area, right? Well, you avoid it for a certain amount of time, but one day you're going to forget and you're going to drive right by that place that kind of triggers you and it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks. So why don't we go together? Why don't we walk through it in our minds together in counseling and say, hey, what bothers you about this call? What are you struggling with? What can we do to make it better or at least something that's tolerable? And another documentary, a first responder said, I don't drive down this way to go home because it steals my happy. And I've never heard it said better because it's true.
Yeah.
Because you may be having a great day, but my wife and my son are very good at saying, you all right, Dad? Are you all right, honey? Like, because they see the change in my face when something affects me, right? And what good are we doing by saying, oh, I'm fine. Like nothing's wrong. Just say what's on your mind. We don't have to share details. People don't need details, but they need to know something.
So what's your wife's reaction when you do that? When you say, because I found my wife and I, we have a pretty good marriage, but we have our moments and we both have our stuff we deal with. But one thing I found that works for our relationship is if I'm like, I can't talk about this right now, like you said, I'll talk to you tomorrow morning or I'll talk to you in an hour, whatever it is. As long as I follow up with it, there's not an issue. If I'm the one that brings it, it's not her saying, hey, follow me. So that's just my personal, that's what works for me personally when I'm in a moment where I don't want to talk about something or for whatever reason. That's great grammar right there. So when you send that text, what is her response if you're comfortable speaking for her and saying, like, is she just like, okay, hey, what's up? What do you want for dinner? And then when you're ready, you guys talk and everybody's, instead of being at 11, you're at a, hopefully not an 11 and can talk and,
So with her, like I wish I could say it's just as perfect as that. But what I think tends to happen, and I'm guessing it happens with you as well, is that you can say that. You can say like, hey, just give me some space or I'm going to be this way. And you can feel like you're in a good spot. But something that means absolutely nothing will totally trigger you and you'll snap about something that has nothing to do with that individual. So firefighters and first responders are going to hate to hear this, but I think the key is constant communication, which we're not good at. And I think it's just saying like, I know for us, and I wish it didn't get to this point, but it's like lashing out at each other or talking to each other in a way we normally wouldn't if things are good or we're on vacation or we have no stresses at the time. But it's saying as quickly as possible, taking ownership. You got to take ownership of what you're doing in those situations. I think for myself, at least, a lot of times I would justify, oh, I saw a horrible call. I'm not in a good headspace. And you need to just understand that. And so my reaction is based off of the things that I've seen and you need to give me some grace. And it's like, no. And even if you don't verbalize it that way, it's just thinking, me, right? And so in rehab, one of the big things we focus on is what is your part in this situation? Like we're all here in treatment because we're alcoholics, we're addicts, we're whatever we are. What's your role in that? Because you can make all the excuses in the world, and some of them are pretty justifiable for some of these guys that had been through childhood trauma, been abused physically and otherwise. And it's like, my gosh, how are you even still here today, right? But it's saying, where do I take responsibility in this? Like, yes, I was numbing myself with alcohol at the time because I didn't want to take a medication. I didn't want to talk about things, and I got out of control, right? But it's taking responsibility for my part in that, that I picked up the first drink, that I decided, even consciously or not, to go down that road and use that to self-medicate is like, okay, how do I fix it? What do I do differently? And it's the same thing in the relationship is when I'm struggling, when I'm going through all these things, am I going to get defensive and say, well, it's because of this, this, and this, and I have an excuse for it? Or is it saying, hey, I'm sorry, and this is what we do now, is it's me saying, I'm really sorry. It's totally not you. Like, I'm just having a rough time today, and I'm sorry that I lashed out. And so hopefully, usually by the end of the day, we're able to sit with each other, go on a walk, even if we're just getting ready to get in bed, to sit down and say, hey, like, what happened today? Why did we do that? Is there a bigger issue that we have personally? Or is it because of our lives, right? Because even you ask me, you wear the uniform, you do the job, and then you go home. And to me, to this day, 24 years later, this is my biggest struggle is we're meant to, or we're taught that, cool, you're there for 2 days or whatever your shifts are, you go home, right? And I just had a really rough shift this last cycle. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a lot, just heavy, and got a lot going on in my personal life, and just exhausted when I got off work. And I get home and I get in my shower in my beautiful home, and I have a great life and all these other things. But all I can see is like the feelings, the emotions, the calls that I went on, and it's in stark contrast, and it's hard because when you're at work, I've talked to veterans and they say like, when you're deployed, that's your job. You're doing your job. So you can be there and you can be focused. And it's kind of similar. It's apples and oranges, but it's similar in the fact of for 2 days I'm at work. I can be in work mode. I can say, cool, I'm working. But when I'm off work, how do I process? How do I go from happy or dealing with all the stuff I do at work to being happy-go-lucky? Like I may have an amazing dinner with my wife, all these other things, but I'm sitting in a busy restaurant that's super loud and something breaks in the corner and it reminds me of the car accident I responded to or whatever else. And so it's being able to filter that, being able to talk about that, like you and I talking about it now, is part of my counseling. It's part of why I advocate. Is selfishly, it helps me process things, but it's hoping that whoever watches this podcast says, oh, wow, really? I do that too. And saying, okay, cool. I'm not alone because Robert does it too. Maybe I do need to reach out to Next Rung. Maybe I do need to contact Skulls for Hope. Maybe I need to talk to my peer support team. And what's amazing is my department and the departments across the country are getting so good about having peer support team members. And they're getting so good at the new generation of people coming up through the ranks to say, hey, what do you need? What can we do? How can we help you, kind of thing. And that was never the case before. And so what they get, the benefit they get from Next Rung is a lot of people don't want to reach out to their own teams. They don't want to reach out to their peers that they work with because they're afraid to share. And they think it's across the board that I've heard it is they're afraid to say, if I tell somebody that I'm struggling with this child call, then they're going to ridicule me. They're going to say, well, you can't handle this. You can't do this. You can't do that. And they're going to take me out of the field, or they're going to tell me that I'm not fit to do the job. And that's the worst thing for us, right? But if you reach out to strangers where it's totally confidential and ask us for help, ask us to get you started on that process, we answer questions from, hey, like, let me just tell you about this call and I'm fine and we don't hear from these people ever again. We have relationships. I have given my personal number to a number of people because we've created those friendships. But it's just, there's so many different ways to get help. It's almost silly for us not to ask. But I really believe in my heart that in the next 10 years, there's going to be a complete change in not only the fire service, but EMS and hospital. Like there's so many underserved levels of this that I think we're going to change.
Yeah, that's the hope too, and that's really we try to talk about the hope side of this too in the film, because I think that's the more important. And the more important, that's a bad way to say it, but it's just as important as the stories that you and Chief Beers talk about in the films. So with that said, part of the film, we talk about Skulls for Hope.
Mhm.
And talk to me about how that came about, because I have a story for you as well, that for Skulls for Hope, which I've been waiting to tell you for
Okay.
the podcast. So I've been hanging
Mhm.
on to something. But talk to me about Skulls for Hope and how did it come about?
So probably, gosh, now it's been almost 16 or 17 years. But I kind of coined it like at some point, doesn't matter what point in your career. I know the gentleman that was with me on the call that affected me said he had never in 15 years up to that point of his career seen it. And I was about 3 years into my career with my department.
Mhm.
But I had what for me has always been the worst call that I've ever experienced. And I lost a child for the very first time on a call. And that child happened to be the same age and size as my son. And up to that point, I had kind of seen the whole of like stabbings, shootings, heart attacks, car accidents, all
Yeah.
the stuff that we kind of get trained to respond to. We skim over kid calls because, and don't quote me on skim over. I think maybe I skimmed over kid calls mostly
Mm.
because it's not okay. It's never okay. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter who you are. But it just something about that call just really, really affected me, changed my life. It was the start of my flashbacks. It was the start of I didn't know it at the time, but after counseling, after going and getting tested, everything else, the PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, all that stuff kind of started coming to a head. I didn't know it at the time, obviously. But for some reason, and I still wish to this day I could come out and just say it was because of this. But I always
Yeah.
knew that up to that point, I'd always had a rubber band or a Live Strong bracelet or something on my wrist, and I was constantly like touching it, right?
Mhm.
And for some reason, I was like, I want, I can make these, I can do this, I can make something and put something together that I can just make my own and I can just have for myself. And so I started making these bracelets, and again, I don't know where I saw it and when I saw it, but for some reason I came across the meaning of the skull in the Tibetan culture, which was basically it's the impermanence of life, that everything lives, dies, and you need to live every day
Mhm.
to its fullest. And that really, really in those that moment hit home to me, and I was like, okay. So I started integrating a skull in every bracelet that I made, and for me, it was very personal. Nobody knew anything about it. I had probably a handful of bracelets, like maybe 15 that I had made very badly at the time because it was like I'm teaching myself and things like that. But it was pretty near and dear to my heart because I knew what it meant. And so when I was doing CPR on somebody, or if I was reflecting on a bad call, or if I was even in counseling, like I was constantly touching, I was constantly playing with it. And my ex-wife, who I was with at the time, happened to go into my drawer and she found the bracelets and she's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Nothing. Don't worry about it." And I
Yeah.
had zero desire to share it. I had zero desire to talk about it. I knew what it meant to me, but I've gotten past it. But I still have a hard time some days understanding that it means something to other people, right? And so it took the prodding of her and another close friend of constantly saying, "Hey, you need to share this. You need to share this." And it was that whole
Yeah.
idea of one person. It's all that matters. If you can affect one person and change their perspective, then then it'll be worth it. And I wish it was as cut and dry as that. But it kind of started, it's still a very small business. It's now a nonprofit. But we're here to start the conversation. It's to let others know that it's okay to not be okay and they're not alone. And we talk about how it was hard for me and it's still hard for me to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm struggling," right? But what these bracelets do is it gives you something concrete. It gives you something to hold in your hand. It
Yeah.
gives you something to look down at in your worst moment. Like for me, I've gotten better at it, but I always found a corner in my house, somewhere I felt safe that I could put my back against when I was having a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And I would calm myself. And when I was doing that, I'd pull my knees into my chest and I'd look at my bracelet and I'd say, "Okay, like
Mhm.
center yourself. It's okay. Like you're going to be okay." And
Yeah.
especially now with where the community's gotten, it's a very big reminder that I'm not alone in my struggles. And that brings me a whole lot of peace. And so I'd say in the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, I've seen a big growth in the amount of people that have reached out for them, that have had them. And you could have never told me that it would mean enough to somebody that when it breaks on a call, like a patient pulls it off of them or it gets caught on something and it breaks, people will write me in a panic saying, "Hey, can I get another bracelet? It's my safe place. It's like I
Yeah.
need it and don't have it and I feel naked." And that I was like, "No, that's just me. That's not you. That's me." And so, for whatever reason, it's been a beacon for a lot of us. It's by no means nationwide. I mean, it is nationwide as far as where they've gone. It's even gone international. Obviously, it's international right now, with
That's
where
right,
you're at.
Portugal.
But it's been amazing, and my hope is that in retirement I can give it the attention it deserves. But right now we are very much a community, first responders and anyone like you and I talked about it is it's not just for first responders. It's for anybody
Right.
that's been in a traumatic situation, anybody that's struggled. It doesn't matter what you've been through. You don't have to see a bunch of horrible calls and do this job for a living or be a veteran and have been deployed 6 times to be able to associate a traumatic event and say, I'm not okay. And that's kind of the problem too, right? Is you get a civilian or somebody that doesn't do a first responder job or isn't a veteran or isn't a police officer, whatever else isn't and they don't want to tell you that they're struggling because they're like, well, it's not anything compared to what you're dealing with. And I'm like,
Yeah.
do you sit in the corner of your room? Do you cry at night? Do you drink to numb yourself? Okay, well then you're not alone. Like, come join the community, and it's okay. And so it's been a really neat beacon. It's been a therapeutic thing for me, and up to now, every single bracelet I make. So it's really wonderful for me to know that when somebody I see it on social media or somebody sends a picture or whatever else, I know that it's come from me.
Yeah. And yeah, it's amazing to see, and I think that's aside from Next Rung, which is first responder oriented. This is a community worldwide. Anybody, like you said, anybody who may be struggling, we're all struggling. Like it doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's struggling to varying degrees. So that's what was important to me, and that was when I met you, and before we did the interview for the film, and we sat in that room and talked for like an hour and a half before I even set up a tripod or anything, and connected. And that's always been so. One of the amazing things about you is that you're just open. You're an open book. You're a wonderful human being. You're kind. You work hard to help because you've seen you had a darker path, unfortunately. But one of the things for me as a civvy is, if you'll notice, I don't have mine.
Mm-hmm.
I was, it became, like you said, I would find, if I was doing something or I was thinking, and I would find the skull. This is what I would do. I'd spin around, I'd find the skull, and then I'd
Mm-hmm.
spin that's what I would do. That was my thing, and that was my comfort. And I got used to it. I got used to having it on my wrist. And then my wife and I were out to dinner with some friends, and a good friend that I've made here in Portugal, who's a former first responder from in the UK. He was a law enforcement officer. He was having a hard time. His dad died, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, and some things were going on, and he was really struggling. And he got upset, really upset at dinner. And I was sitting there spinning the skull, and I said, and this is the thing, I don't know. I was like, this is supposed to go to him right now. This is no longer my bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
Robert gave it to me, and I took it off, and I said, here you go, take it. I talked to him briefly about what it is, what it meant to me, and he still wears it to this day. He's got it around, he's got it. So I'm looking forward. I go back in a couple of weeks to the States. I have my bracelet waiting for me in Arizona when I go back. So I'll be okay, audience. I'll survive. I'll be okay. But it still is. It's almost like a missing limb. It's like it's there, but it's not there, which is interesting. But I just really wanted to tell you that story because I don't know what it was compelled me in that moment. I was like, this is not mine anymore, and I just handed it to him, and it was very important to him. And then, I was like, you'll get to see the film, and you'll get to understand where this bracelet came from, what's the history, what's the story behind it, and so. It's amazing. So they mean something, and that's the cool thing. And so that's why I support them. That's why I got the tattoo on my arm. So thank you for letting me, your tattoo artist is cool and all that stuff for letting me use that. But we've had a great podcast, Robert. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything we missed? I know you still go out and you speak publicly, EMS core training. You do other things I've seen. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up the podcast?
No, I mean, not specifically, because again, as silly as it sounds, like we talk about at the very core of it, whether it's Next Rung, whether it's Goals for Hope, whether it's your documentary, it's starting the conversation. We never talk about finishing the conversation. We talk about starting the conversation. And what matters in these podcasts, what matters in watching these videos, is that it triggers you to start that conversation. Having the bracelet that, I shared my story. I told you what it meant to me. You were interested enough that you wanted one with no intention of anything other than having it for yourself. But you would be blown away the amount of times I've done it myself, but the amount of times that individuals have reached out to me to say, hey, like, thank you for this, because I ended up giving it to somebody that was in crisis, and it was time. And you said it exactly how you said it. They said, in that moment, it wasn't mine anymore. And while the physical act of giving somebody something is great, I'm guessing that you both had a conversation, because you said, hey, this is what this bracelet represents. This is what it's for. This is what it means to me. And maybe you shared a little bit about yourself, about your struggles, about what you're going through, right? And then you give it to him. And all of a sudden he has it. He's wearing it. He's in a crisis. He's in an okay place because he sees the bracelet, knows your story, knows the story behind Skulls. And then what does he do later, right? He runs into somebody else that he knows that may be struggling. And I'm not saying you pass it along every single time, but you say, hey, I got to hear this person's story, and let me share a little bit about my story. And it's 1,000% just letting people know that they're not alone, because all of us, every single one of us, as first responders, as people, we always judge everything. I couldn't share my story about any of my struggles because I looked at veterans and I said, hey, these guys have been through hell. I can't imagine seeing what they've seen in deployments. And it took veterans telling me that it was okay to not be okay. And so once I spoke to enough of them and felt confident enough, I began to share my story. And I struggle today talking to people that they're like, hey, Rob, I know you're busy. I don't want to bother you. And it's like, this is why I'm here. I can't come to you and say I'm starting a conversation, and if you're in crisis, reach out, and then be like, don't call me. Like, that defeats the whole purpose, right? So long story short, I think it's 1,000% about starting the conversation. It's not about finishing the conversation. It's not about having a tidy ending. It's about somebody listening to this podcast and saying, that's me. This is where I'm at. I need help. And I'm going to reach out to Charlie. I'm going to reach out to Robert. I'm going to reach out to Next Rung. I'm going to reach out. There's a million different resources you can find if you look for us. I still get blown away when people haven't heard of Next Rung, and that's our goal. We're going to change that. Is if you haven't heard of it until today, now you have. And maybe you're going to tell somebody else, and they're going to tell somebody else, until every single first responder knows that they're not alone and that it's okay to not be okay.
All right, Robert, thanks for joining me on the podcast. You're an amazing human being and a bright star. I appreciate you joining me. And I'll have Robert's Schools for Hope, Next Rung, all those in the description there if you want to reach out and find them. And they're both amazing organizations. They're good human beings behind those programs. So thanks for tuning in, and have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.